Whether you're 3-0 or 0-3, we've got all the best waiver wire ads to either improve your starters or add depth before the bye weeks coming up soon on the Fantasy First Down. I'm Ben Wasley. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. Today we're talking waiver ads and adding in a couple of droppables that you can get rid of to create that space, as we do every single Tuesday. Before we get started, please make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you've got any questions about your teams, make sure you hit me up below or on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. You can find my award-winning rankings over at ffdfantasyfootball.com. But let's talk waiver wire ads for today. And we're going to start things off, as we always do, with quarterbacks. And there's a couple of good options coming into this week. Drake May gets a good matchup against the Panthers. Now, it wasn't a great matchup, admittedly, for Atlanta last week, but with the Patriots at home, we will expect that they're going to pass the ball a reasonable amount. May has looked solid so far this season as a top 6 quarterback. This is another very solid opportunity for him to have a good game. And he's still available in quite a few leagues, as is Brock Purdy, who was dropped into quite a lot of leagues because of his injury. He's expected to come back this week with Mac Jones injured himself. That increases the likelihood of Purdy playing. He gets a good matchup against the Jaguars. If you're in a deeper league and you're struggling to find a starter, I wouldn't add these guys to your bench, but if you need a starter for this week, Geno Smith has been a top 12 quarterback this season, despite having a poor game in week 2. He gets a solid Bears matchup. We know they can be attacked through the air. And Sam Darnold, even though he's had a difficult season so far, does get Arizona. You generally can pass against the Cardinals, so he's an okay matchup in a deeper league. Meanwhile, running backs, and there's plenty more opportunities. The number one ad on pretty much every waiver wire is going to be Trey Benson. But if you've been watching my streamers and stashes show so far this season, you would definitely have him because he was one of my favorite stashes for this season. If you haven't stashed him already, though, he is definitely someone that you need to go and pick up. Good chance he'll be a top 15 running back for the remainder of the season. Quinshon Judkins, also a very solid option. He get exactly the workload that we hoped he would get at the start of the season. Dylan Sampson was pretty much entirely phased out of the offense and is totally irrelevant unless Judkins ends up getting a suspension sometime this season. No news on that at this stage. In PPR leagues, you do have to worry about Jerome Ford being the passing down back and that limiting Judkins, but he's still someone that can be a very solid starter. As is Cam Scatterboo, he benefits from the Tyrone Tracy injury. We don't know how long-term that Tracy injury is going to be, but it should be a couple of weeks, and that means Scatterboo is a borderline starter for a couple of weeks. He's someone that I wasn't really a big fan of keeping him on my bench because it was pretty clear that he was behind Tracy, but now that Tracy is injured, Scatterboo is the starter, and that means he is going to be probably a low-end running back too for this week, at least because he does get an okay matchup at home, and I expect plenty of checkdowns. But long-term, I think he's probably going to be a running back 3 most weeks. So you really only need him if you need a starter and in a little bit of trouble. In most leagues, you're already going to have better players available. Nick Chubb is the 4th on the list. I'm not particularly excited about him either. He's starting to lose touches to Woody Marks, so that is concerning. I do feel like Chubb may not keep this role long-term, but against the Titans, I feel like this is an okay matchup, and you can use him this week. If you're a little bit desperate for someone, he might be available in your league soon because he is getting dropped off some teams. Meanwhile, some deeper starting options. Honestly, don't mind Kareem Hunt. He's in pretty much a 50-50 split with Pacheco. And we know against the Ravens, they're going to be chasing quite a lot of the time. Wouldn't be surprised if we see more Hunt than we usually do because they're going to have to get themselves into a lot of passing situations. For that reason, he's a viable PPR desperation start for this week and someone you can have on your bench given his upside. Not someone I'm going out of my way to get, but if you need someone to start or you're going to need someone to start soon, Hunt is a viable option. Woody Marks is a desperation option at the moment, but I do feel like there's a good chance of him turning into a starter soon enough. So he's not so much a handcuff where you're waiting for an injury. He really does have an opportunity to earn this job on merit. I wouldn't want to start him most of the time, but he is someone that I think could earn the job and you don't need an injury for him to get it. Miles Sanders has also been taking touches off Javonte Williams. It's a bit surprising because Williams has played okay, but it is heading a little bit towards a 50-50 split. That gives Sanders a little bit of upside. He's not someone I really want to start this week, but he at least gives you a better floor than most of the backup style guys, most of the running back twos for their teams. And Chris Rodriguez, We expected during the preseason he might get a lot of goal line work. As it turned out, he kind of took a lot of the Austin Eckler role, but only the early down part where he's getting a lot of the starting work. But it could be if he spends more time, he starts to take over from Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think that's probably unlikely, but he's available in the vast majority of leagues. So if you're desperate for someone that you need to start, I'd prefer him over most of those receiving only backs that are around in the league. Now, waiver stash is very, very important for running backs. Very important to fill your bench with guys like with upside. This is where you would have found Trey Benson high on this list every week, for example. And Tyler Algier is one of my favorites. He's even someone you can start in any game where they're likely to win. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case this week, but in a situation where they're a heavy favorite, you can feel pretty good about starting Algier, especially in a non-PPR or half PPR league. He's a great stash, though, because if Bijan Robinson goes down, he is going to get used a lot. Blake Corum, we talked about him potentially taking over from Kyren Williams. He's definitely playing better, but Williams actually improved his usage this week. So I'm not sure what's going on there because that was not what I expected. I ranked him quite low this week. Having said that, Corum is desperately someone you want on your bench. If you're going to have an upside stash, Corum is very high on the list, as is DJ Giddens. We saw that Goodson came back this week, Tyler Goodson, and we kind of thought maybe he might take over a little bit of that role. As it turns out, that didn't occur. Giddens is still clearly ahead of Goodson. I do think that Giddens is the clear backup. And with Samaje Perine injured, Taj Brooks will get a heavy workload if there's an injury to Chase Brown. Not that that's a very upside situation at the moment with how the Bengals are going, but there's just no competition on this roster. They could, of course, bring somebody in. I think they probably would, but it does seem like Brooks is the guy at the moment. He's someone I'm happy to stash in a very deep league. If you're talking like 14 teams or a long bench 12-team league, Brooks is someone that I'm going out and getting. Wide receiver wise, and Quinn Johnston's been someone I've been talking about for a while. I talked about him in the preseason and also during the season. We knew from preseason usage that he was going to get quite a bit of opportunity being the wide receiver too, even with Keenan Allen and Trey Harris and all the rookies around. And it has turned out this way. He's top 5 wide receiver this season. He's worthwhile picking up. He's available in your league, though I wouldn't be going out of my way to start him. Michael Pittman's had a great season as the clear number 1 there now. Daniel Jones seems to have the connection with him. I think he's a relatively safe start most weeks. Don't love it this week, but I'm still probably starting him. Chris Godwin could well be back by week 4, though I think it's probably one more week, and I think it probably is a slow ramp up. He's not someone I really want to start this week, but he has upside. He has so much upside, and there's so many injuries going on. Potentially Mike Evans could even be out. So I do like the idea of having Goodwin on my roster. Finally, Wan'Dale Robinson had a very disappointing game, but so did Malik Neighbors, and you're not suddenly dropping Neighbors. So I do think that Robinson still has an opportunity to turn that thing around. So he's someone that I want to have on my bench. Even in a shallower league, I still feel like he's got some upside in PPR. We go slightly deeper, and Troy Franklin, don't be put off by what we saw this week. He was still out there on the snaps. The game just didn't go his way. I forgot to change his photo. Somehow made them both Darnell Mooney. Anyway, Troy Franklin for the Broncos is someone you still definitely want to be going and picking up. Don't drop him straight away. Hold on to him. See what happens. He's still clearly the wide receiver too and still getting all the usage we expected when we talked about this last week. Darnell Mooney as well, taking a while to get going, but he is coming back from injury. He's also someone that I want to have on my bench in a deeper league because the upside's there. If you need someone that you can actually start, Romeo Doubs is getting starter snaps for the Packers. He doesn't really get enough targets, but he will have some big weeks. He's someone that I feel okay about, especially this week against the Cowboys. We saw what the Bears did to them. I do feel like this could be a solid week for him. And Alec Imanor, we knew coming into the season that he was going to get some opportunities, and he got a touchdown this week, but otherwise this offense doesn't look particularly good. I'm not going out of my way to get Imanor, but he's fine in a deeper league to pick him up. And if you're in a super deep league, well, same situation with Kayshon Boutte. Didn't have a good game this week, but takes on the Panthers next week. So the scoring opportunities could be there, even though the Panthers looked better against the Falcons. I still think Boutte is someone that's worth picking up. He's going to have some low weeks, but he is still their only real startable wide receiver at the moment. Trey Tucker had a massive week. I'm not really excited about it, but when you see a player have that sort of week and have the 4th most points in the season, you kind of need to recommend picking him up. He's getting the same usage he always was. He's the wide receiver 2 behind Jacoby Myers. I do feel like it's going to be hard to start Tucker most weeks, but you see an injury to Brock Bowers potentially or Myers, and suddenly Tucker might be the guy, even though I think he's mostly a deep threat. Jalen Tolbert, I mean, this is a solid situation for him. he obviously gets the benefit of CeeDee Lamb's injury and goes into what's probably a wide receiver 2 role. I think he's going to be startable in a very deep league. Same thing with Parker Washington, takes over from De'Ami Brown. He's technically the wide receiver 2 because we're seeing Travis Hunter been playing a lot on defense, and that's limiting his opportunities on offense. They haven't moved him past just playing an 11 personnel, and I think that's really going to help Washington, who has looked good in limited opportunities. Tight end wise, Jake Ferguson, obviously going to be the main beneficiary of CeeDee Lamb being out. Didn't really love him going into this season without with Lamb being in, but now that Lamb's out, Ferguson immediately becomes a top option in the same way that Dallas Goedert does where there's an injury to someone like an AJ Brown. Hunter Henry is the number 1 tight end of the season, ludicrously, so I have to mention him here. He gets the Panthers, which isn't the greatest matchup, but it's fine. At least there's scoring upside for him, and he's getting a lot of targets in a lot of weeks. Kyle Pitts has seen his snap count rise significantly every single week, and I see that continuing at the moment. So, I mean, no reason not to pick him up and give him a chance if he's available in your league. And finally, Brendan Strain's been someone I've been harping on about for a while as someone you could get very late in draft, and he's still available in a lot of leagues. Tight end 15 on the season. I do see that improving if the offense improves. Kicker and DST-wise, and Spencer Strader, I mean, he's the number 1 kicker on the season. He's available in the majority of leagues. It's a great kicker matchup away at the Rams. I think he's someone that I'm going to be picking up in a lot of leagues. Matt Prater, disappointing at times, but I still think he's someone you can pick up against the Saints. That is a very good kicking matchup. He's obviously playing for the Bills. They just don't have a jersey picture for him yet. The Lions DST taking on the Browns. We saw that went well for the Packers. The Lions can do a good job against a good offense in the Ravens, so why not against a bad offense in the Browns? And the Texans DST at home against Tennessee. I mean, this is a good opportunity for them. We've seen the Titans have struggled. They've conceded the second most points to DSTs this season. It's a great opportunity to use the Texans, who are going to be available in a lot of leagues as well. Meanwhile, guys, you can drop, and the obvious guys are the injury guys like James Conner and Najee Harris. Dylan Sampson is clearly behind now that Quinton Junkins is back. Caleb Johnson didn't even get a touch this week. Not interested in him. RJ Harvey is an interesting situation. We saw Tyler Beatty not really involved, and yet it wasn't really Harvey that benefited. It was J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins clearly ahead of Harvey at the moment, and even he is not someone that we're really ranking as a top 20 running back. So if Dobbins isn't being ranked there, what's the upside there with Harvey? That's what I'm kind of thinking along those lines. If you're in a deeper league, maybe you keep him, but I think in most leagues he's droppable. Ray Davis is someone that I liked as a bench stash, but we've seen Ty Johnson being used over him at times. I'm just not convinced that he's going to get an every down role, and that really lowers his upside for me. And Jalen Wright was someone I thought would be ahead of Ollie Gordon. That's not turned out to be the case. Ollie Gordon's even someone you could pick up in some leagues. I don't know that I'm really going out of my way to get him, but he is certainly someone that you can feel okay about as a waiver stash, but I'm definitely dropping Wright. I'll just keep tabs on that, because if Wright starts getting more touches, it might be that he takes over from Gordon as the backup, or it might mean that neither of them is relevant. In a shallower league, I'm dropping Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, because we saw so much of Chris Gonzalez and Rodriguez, and we also saw plenty of Jeremy McNichols. I just don't think you can feel good about any of the Commanders running backs except in a deeper league. And Tyrone Tracy, I mean, I didn't feel great about him coming into the season because he's never really going to be a top 20 running back for the Giants. That's why I don't have Scatterboo ranked that high, and why I'm not excited about getting him this week, and why I didn't want him on my bench or to draft him early. The Tracy injury is very lucky in that Scatterboo suddenly gets opportunities, but I don't know. Tracy's probably going to be out for a couple of weeks, and when he comes back, it's definitely going to be some sort of committee unless Scatterboo really disappoints. So there's really not that much point in keeping Tracy, for the same reason there wasn't that much point in keeping Scatterboo when Tracy wasn't injured, especially in shallower leagues. Wide receiver wise, and Xavier Leggett, I mean, he's injured, but he's also not getting used properly. So I'm not particularly interested in him. Rashid Shaheed is dropping snaps for the Saints. There are some leagues where you can feel okay about starting him. There'll be some weeks where he gets a lot of targets, but I'm just not particularly interested in him. I think the upside's very low. I find it hard to believe anything good's going to come from his situation. He's still behind Olave and Johnson and Kamara, and there's just not enough volume to go around and feel good about him most weeks. There are some PPR leagues where you could maybe suggest that everyone is going to be relevant and therefore needs to be in there for bye weeks. But Shahid is someone I'm dropping in a lot of leagues, especially shallower leagues. Josh Palmer, dropping off a little bit. They're starting to use a little bit more other guys like Shavers and Elijah Moore. So for that reason, Palmer's not particularly interesting in most leagues. Hunter Renfrow barely got a look in this week. And when Liggett's back and when Coker's back, for example, he's going to drop off entirely. He's kind of mixing it up with Tremaine at the moment and not getting the full snap count. Don't know what's going on there, but I just don't think it's worth having him on rosters. And Adam Thielen, you don't need, and you probably don't need Jalen Naylor either, with Jordan Addison back from suspension. In a shallower league, Travis Hunter, we talked about earlier, just not getting opportunities outside 11 personnel and playing a lot more on defense. We talked about this as a possibility earlier in the season. It's why I had Ted McMillan ranked ahead of him in pretty much every situation. Hunter is someone that you just can't trust at the moment. Stephon Diggs still hasn't seen his snap count rise. He's still only playing about half the time. This offense is struggling. They're really cycling the wide receivers. In most leagues, he's pretty much droppable. Cedric Tillman has his snaps drop as well. We're seeing a bit more Isaiah Bond as well, and things just getting cycled a bit. We're seeing a lot of two tight end sets, which really hurts all the wide receivers if they cycle them when they're playing with two wide receivers. So Tillman's someone I'm less excited about than I was earlier in the preseason. The Browns just aren't looking very good. And Rashad Bateman, even though he looked good in the game today, he's just really falling off. He's not getting enough snaps. They're using a lot of DeAndre Hopkins in the same situation, and also a little bit of the younger, smaller guys as well. So for that reason, Bateman is someone I'm not excited about because it's only going to get worse when Isaiah Likely returns and they play with a lot more two tight ends, and also Patrick Ricard too. Quarterbacks and tight ends. I mean, Burrow's probably going to be out for the vast majority of the season, if not the whole season. If you don't have an IR spot, then I would probably be dropping him. If you have an IR spot, then maybe not. But, I mean, how good is he going to be when he gets back anyway? They're probably going to be rushing him back if they do that. I just don't feel good about this situation. Michael Penix just looked very poor, and I'm not interested, and I wasn't interested coming into the season. CJ Stroud, I haven't been interested all season either. He's droppable for me. And Dak Prescott gets a tough matchup. Didn't look good last week in a shallower league. Go find someone else. Tight end wise, and Evan Ingram, I've talked about heaps. He's playing in a committee with Adam Troutman. They've just brought Nate Adkins back from injury. I mean, this is just going to be really ugly. I didn't like him in the preseason. He was my tight end 17, and I'm starting to think that was too high. Jatavian Sanders has an injury that's going to hold him out for a little bit. He's not good enough to hold on your bench. Colson Loveland, same situation, has an injury. Got a couple of touches last week, but he only played like 6 snaps. Ran 5 routes and got 3 targets. That's just pure luck more than anything else. I do think there will be a time this season where he starts to take over from Cole Kmet, but how much upside does that have? When Loveland's out, are you going to be starting Kmet and excited about him? If not, what's the point in Loveland? And finally, Zach Ertz. I know this sounds a little bit weird because he was someone that I didn't mind streaming last week, but his snap count really dropped with Bates out, which is a little bit weird. It's just like they don't trust having 2 tight ends out on the field when Bates isn't there, and therefore Ertz's snap count drops as well as a result. It's not an ideal situation. Therefore, Ertz is someone I'm dropping in a shallower league. And a deeper league, you kind of have to hold on to him. It depends on your league settings as to whether that's a good idea for you specifically. And that's all we've got for the Waiver Wire for week 4. As always, hit me up with any questions or comments or criticisms. I don't mind. I can take any of the above. Rankings will be out soon at ffdfantasyfootball.com. And it'll be great if you could like to subscribe because the Streamers and Stashes show will be coming in a couple of days' time. I'll talk to you guys then.